Hi guys, and welcome to today's live stream. I am Libertman, forced to be alone but free to decide how to live it. And today's episode is a powerful one that many men feel deeply but rarely talk about. So today we are going to walk through a scientific study that gets right to the center of this problem. Why loneliness has become one of the dominant emotional experiences for men today, and how it interacts with mental health, social support, and the erosion of community structures. As always, I will read parts of the study in simple language, and I will explain what the researchers found, and then toward the end, we'll break everything down through the C4PC model, the 4 macro group of modern masculinity. Sorry. So let's jump right in to the study. That you can find it in the description below, and you can click, and if you have access to the actual source, then you can read in full. Otherwise, you can look for it to download later. So the title study is Associations Between Loneliness and Perceived Social Support and Outcomes of Mental Health Problems, a systematic review, by the authors Wang, Lloyd-Evans, Giacco, Forsyth, Nebo, Mann, and Johnson. It was a study conducted in 2018, published by the MC Psychiatry, and you have the link below. So now, before we get into the thick of it, let me give you a simple starting point. This is a systematic review, which means that authors didn't conduct a new experiment. Instead, they gathered, filtered, and analyzed dozens of existing studies that look at loneliness and social support in relation to mental health outcomes. So we're talking about a wide-angle view of the problem, not one sample, not one country, not one context. This is a synthesis of evidence from many different populations, and that makes the conclusions much stronger. So let's read key parts of the abstract, and since the abstract is short, I will include the essential sentences and expand them conversationally. Because for copyright reason, I cannot read the whole abstract in full live, or the whole study in full. Though you can consult it online privately, and some of these platforms require a subscription, right? So let's start. Loneliness and perceived social support are associated with mental health outcome in the general population, but their association with outcomes for people with mental health problems has not been systematically reviewed. So already here we see something critical. Everyone knows loneliness feels bad, right? But this study asks a more precise question. What happens when people already struggling with mental health issues also experience loneliness? So, as a spoiler, things get dramatically worse, unfortunately. The abstract follows. We found that loneliness was associated with worse mental health symptoms, including depression, anxiety, psychosis, and suicidal ideation. So this is huge. Loneliness doesn't just feel painful, it amplifies existing symptoms in almost every domain. Depression becomes deeper, anxiety becomes more intrusive, psychosis symptoms intensify, and also suicidal ideation increases. So now let me pause here for a second, because this is an important point. The study consistently shows that human connection is not optional for psychological stability. It is almost like oxygen. It's invisible, silent, but essential. When it's missing, men begin to collapse internally, long before they collapse externally. So that is an important point. Continuing with the abstract, it says lower perceived social support predicted poorer recovery and higher persistence of the symptoms. So even if a man has people around him, what matters is whether he feels supported, not whether support technically exists. If a man does not perceive support, the brain reacts almost the same way as if there were no one around. This is why millions of men in relationship feel lonely, and this is why men with coworkers still feel isolated, and this is why having 200 online contacts means nothing sometimes. So support must be felt, not just be present. So when it comes to the methodology used, I'm not going to go deeper in each of these live streams, because otherwise it would be boring, and no one that are not psychologists or researchers in these fields are interested in. I will focus more in results, in the data, whatever is relevant, and the conclusions and the implications of the results of each study, and then tailor that results and implication and conclusion for the 4 macro groups of the C4PC model of personality. So when it comes to methodology, the researchers review multiple longitudinal and cross-sectional studies covering different clinical populations, different age groups, and various forms of mental health difficulties. They didn't run their own experiment. Instead, they filtered the scientific literature using strict inclusion criteria, evaluated quality, and then extracted the patterns. So that's all we need to know about the methodology in simple terms. So what matters now is what they found. And if there are also some researchers or other psychologists listening, then you can go deeper by the source in the description and read the study in full. As this is the first live stream, so it's important that I clarify what is going to be the dynamic of the broadcast. So I won't go in full in the following live streams about the technical aspect of the studies. So now let's go deeper into the findings. In the most plain human language and not falling into academic jargon. The first key finding is that loneliness is one of the most powerful predictors of poor mental health outcomes. The study repeatedly observed that loneliness worsens existing mental health symptoms, that loneliness predicts a slower recovery, and that loneliness also increases the risk of relapse. So, as I was saying earlier, loneliness doesn't just accompany mental health problems, it fuels them. It's like pouring gasoline or gas on a psychological fire. The second finding is that perceived social support is protective, but only if it feels real. So here's something subtle. It's not the size of a man's social circle that matters. It's the quality and emotional authenticity of the connections. Researchers found that even one meaningful connection, can buffer against depression and anxiety, but shallow or conflict-filled relationships offer no protection. Then the third finding is that men experience loneliness differently and often more severely. While the study didn't separate genders in every dataset, the broader literature consistently shows that men have fewer close friendships, men rely heavily on a partner for emotional support, men receive less support even when they ask, and men are judged more harshly for emotional expression. So, although the study is not male-specific in this case, the implications strongly point toward a gendered experience of loneliness. Then the fourth finding, we have that loneliness predicts suicidal ideation more strongly than many other known risk factors. This one is important as well. Across multiple datasets, loneliness was one of the strongest predictors of suicidal thoughts. sometimes stronger than financial stress and stronger than past trauma or physical illness. Loneliness literally kills men, as we're talking of men right now. It also do the same with women, but we're talking about numbers and levels of severity. And then finally, the finding number 5 is that recovery from mental health problems becomes significantly harder when loneliness is present. So even if a man is receiving therapy or medication, loneliness slows improvement dramatically. Think about that. A man can be doing everything right and still struggle because humans are not designed to suffer in isolation. So, okay, before we move into conclusions, let me, as it is the first live stream, but I think that I will have to do it regularly. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in these findings, you are not imagining anything, you are not weak, you are not broken, quote unquote. You are experiencing the natural psychological consequence of living in the most socially disconnected era in human history. So this study simply helps us put scientific language to what millions of men feel every day. So now let's walk through what the researchers concluded after analyzing all this evidence. The first conclusion is that loneliness should be treated as a core mental health factor, not a side effect. Traditionally, psychiatrists treat symptoms like depression, anxiety, psychosis, etc. But this review argues that loneliness itself must be addressed as part of the treatment because it's causal, not incidental. Then the second conclusion is that increasing perceived social support must become a clinical priority. Again, remember that perceived is everything. A man may have family or co-workers, but if he experiences them as emotionally distant or critical, the brain registers him as socially unsafe. So treatment must go beyond just saying to a patient, join a group, talk to people, and instead ask, do you feel seen? Do you feel understood? Do you feel emotionally supported? That difference decides the recovery speed. The third conclusion is that social disconnection is a public health emergency. This is not poetic exaggeration, it's scientifically stated. Loneliness increases depression, increases anxiety, substance abuse, cardiovascular disease, mortality risk. So it's as dangerous as smoking or alcoholism. It's not a trivial thing. And the last conclusion is that interventions must be designed differently for different types of people. And here is where the C4PC model of personality becomes essential, because the study doesn't give tailored solutions, right? They give general data, but it implies that one-size-fits-all approaches fail. So different personality structures require different interventions and coping mechanisms. Which brings us to the last to the major part of the to the live stream, that is tailoring all this study result into our C4PC personality model. So, okay, now that we have covered what the research actually says, let's take a deeper look at this through the lens of the C4PC model, the 4 macro groups of modern male psychology I have developed to simplify the entrance to the self-knowledge path for every man, to save hours. So if you haven't checked already, you can go to the first playlist of the channel that is called Know Yourself, and there you're going to find a whole playlist with a walkthrough on how to start your own self-knowledge path, in which you're going to know which is your own personality type in the MBTI, which are your 5 core traits in the Big 5, and also you're going to get introduced to the integral theory by Ken Wilber, from which I'm taking the 4-quadrant model to analyze all the levels of reality, to analyze any topic. In this case, we're analyzing topics related to the manosphere and loneliness and mental health and all the topics related to mental health. So that will give you a theoretical framework to understand from where all the content of this channel is being conveyed and created. So, okay, now that we have covered what the research actually says, and now we move on and take a deeper look at this study, but through the lens of the C4PC model, because loneliness doesn't affect all men in the same way, as we were saying. Each group internalizes it differently and copes differently and breaks down differently as well. So, I'm checking now the chat. Sorry that I haven't checked the chat. This is my very first live stream ever in my life. It took me a long time to learn how to do so. So I see a first comment. I think I hope I am reading correctly. We have a Holo 406 here. He says, "Hi Libertman, I discovered your channel yesterday and subscribed. Great that you also live stream. I'm interested in understanding male loneliness and all related to psychology." Well, that's great, Holo 406. Welcome. You are the very first commenter on this channel, so receive your prize. I don't know what to give you, but I'm really honored that you have discovered the channel so just right in the beginning. Hopefully we get some traction soon. As I shared in the in another video, or in the I made the first post in the channel, I think yesterday, in which I explained that I've been preparing all the main content of this channel throughout this year. So I've been working on the channel, learning how to create videos and then recording it and So all the videos that are being uploaded along this month had been already created a time ago. So now I'm going to start this series of live streams. I have prepared around like 62 studies to cover. So around, I'm planning to make this a live stream per each study. So as the live stream get recording and then get into a video, then they will become a video itself for people to watch it later. But if along these days someone start discovering the channel and wants to join and ask question in the chat, as soon as I finish, I will check the chat to see whether you have a question, and with no problem I will address them all. That's the purpose of the channel, to be helpful and useful for your specific questions. So thank you for being here, and you are only male watcher. So let's go on, and I will check later if you have any question, or otherwise you can leave it later in the replay in the comment section. So yeah, we were about to start with the 4 groups of the C4PC, analyzing loneliness and this study, right? So in the let's start with group 1, that are the internal rationals. Then you in the same playlist you are going to learn the 4 macro groups of the C4PC model. Each macro group is comprised of 4 personality types, even though each of these types are different among one another. They have some core traits and structures in common. That's why I've been studying, trying to make a crossover between these 2 main personality tests, because the MBTI is the most thorough personality test when it comes to cognitive functions being described in detail. It's like presenting the EQ of all the specific the levels of each cognitive function, and on the other side we have the Big Five that is the most thorough and precise test when it comes to the 5 main personality traits that are globally tested, long-term, longitudinally tested. So gives you the most accurate results across cultures and countries and type of men in this case. So the first group, that is the internal rationals, that includes the MBTI types INTP, INTJ, ISTP, and one more that I'm forgetting right now, but you can check it in the video. These men actually tolerate solitude better than any other group, but until they don't, right? Like everyone, everyone has a limit. So how loneliness hits the internal rationals? They tend to retreat into their minds instead of reaching out. Their coping mechanism is intellect, not connection. They convince themselves they don't need anyone. and they suppress emotional needs until a breaking point. So how it shows up? It shows up in increased rumination, hyper-isolation, cynicism and emotional numbness, difficulty distinguishing healthy solitude from emotional collapse. So some of the studies' implication for group for the internal rationals is that this research shows that perceived support is crucial, but the internal rational rarely allows themselves to perceive support even when it's there. Their internal script is, I'm fine, I handle things alone. But their nervous system disagrees with that statement. So loneliness compounds silently at the end of the day, and it's accrued in the long term. And when symptoms appear, they appear sharply in the shape of depression spikes, anxiety spikes, suicidal ideation that rises. So what the internal rational need? Well, they need one meaningful connection, not 10 meaningless ones. They need structured spaces to talk, one friend, one mentor, one small group. They need a reminder that logic cannot replace emotional oxygen. Everything is needed. And they need to know that behavioral routines that prevent disappearing for weeks. So the internal rational survives solitude, but they don't thrive in it. And the study confirms for them recovery from distress is slower unless at least one authentic emotional bond exists. So they don't need too many people or a big circle of people at all, but they need at least one meaningful connection with one person. Then we have the second group, the second macro group of the C4PC, that are the internal emotional men. That are integrated by the INFP, ISFP, and two more that I remember right now. I cannot remember everything. And in the big five, they are characterized by high openness, high agreeableness, and high emotional depth, and two other traits. Also, I don't remember by memory. So this group are the emotionally sensitive introverts, right? So they feel loneliness the deepest, and they suffer the most quietly. So how loneliness hits the internal emotional? They turn pain inward. They idealize relationships and feel crushed when disconnected. They fear burdening others. They tend to wait for someone else to reach out first. So how it shows up for them? Well, in the shape of quiet despair, emotional shutdown, creative but depressive spirals, and feeling invisible even around others. So the study implication for the internal emotionals is that the review clearly shows that loneliness intensifies depressive symptoms, and internal emotionals is already vulnerable to that emotional landscape. When social support is low, they experience deeper emotional pain, they experience longer recovery times, stronger self-blame patterns, and difficulty regulating mood. So what do the internal emotionals need? They need spaces where emotional expression is welcome. They need one stable, empathetic relationship. They need validation that their emotional depth is not a flaw. And they need activities that reconnect them with meaning, whether it's art, reflection, or storytelling of any kind. So internal emotional collapses internally when they are disconnected. For them, loneliness is not just unpleasant, it's existential. This study confirms that this group, the internal emotional, requires sustained emotional connection to maintain stability. So now let's jump into the third group. Let's go with the external emotionals, men. That are the extroverted relational type of men. These men come alive through people, energy, conversations, shared experiences. So how loneliness hits them? Loneliness hits the external emotional very abruptly. They feel restless, needy, impulsive. They seek stimulation to escape emotional voids. They confuse social contact with emotional intimacy. And so, how loneliness shows up for this group? Over socializing but still feeling empty, by jumping into bad relationships to avoid being alone. Their depression is masked by hyperactivity and also with escapism, by drinking, hookups, distractions in general. So this study, the study implication for this group, the external emotionals, shows that the perceived social support, not the activity level, predicts mental health outcomes. This group can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. And when loneliness hits, symptoms for them escalate really fast, with anxiety spikes, emotional dysregulation that increases significantly, dependency patterns start to forming, and recovery becomes harder because they look for relief in others, not in internal stability, like the two initial groups. So what they need, the internal emotional? They need one or two deep, secure relationships. They need boundaries to avoid flooding themselves with shallow connections. They need internal coping strategies, not just social stimulation. And they need emotional regulation skills. So the external emotionals, this group has the highest risk of mistaking being social with not being lonely, which the study shows is absolutely not the same. And lastly, let's analyze this study's implication for the last group, that are the external rationals, men. These are the extroverted logical men, type of men. These are the builders, the problem solvers, the men who stay busy to avoid emotional collapse. So how loneliness hits this group? Loneliness hits the external rational later than other groups. Suddenly and very intensely once it arrives, because that tendency to rationalize, to over rationalize, creates this delay in experiencing the symptoms, right, of everything related to emotions. So loneliness hits them with shame, because admitting loneliness feels like admitting weakness, right? So, and it hits them through burnout, irritability, and emotional withdrawal. So the loneliness shows up as being a workaholic, turning short-tempered, shows up in a sense of inner emptiness, and by feeling unsupported, but refusing to ask for help at the same time. So the study implications for the external rationals says that this group appears functional on the surface, but the study also warns that loneliness magnifies symptoms even for high-functioning individuals like the external rationals. When social support is low, the external rationals experience chronic stress buildup, a decline in emotional resilience. They experience an increased risk of depression masked by productivity, and a delayed but severe mental crashes. So what do this group need? The external rational need a space where vulnerability is not punished. They need peer relationships with other competent men. They need a break from the fix everything alone kind of identity they had forged. And they need the permission to slow down, right? So the external rational group is the most likely to pretend they are fine until they are absolutely not fine. So now let's get to round up our first live stream. Let's go to a final integrated takeaway of all of this. So when we combine the study's findings with the C4PC groups, it emerges a pattern, right? That every single type of man needs emotional connection, but each man breaks in a different way when that connection is missing. So loneliness is not just a feeling. It's a psychological destabilizer. It's a silent amplifier of every vulnerability a man already carries. That is what we can retain from as a conclusion from this study and apply to the 4 personality macro groups of the C4PC. So before we close, let me tell you that if you're listening to this and it resonates with your experience, remember that loneliness is not proof that you have failed. It's proof that you are human. And there are ways to rebuild connection in a way that fits your temperament and your psychological style. That's what this entire channel is about. So in the next live streams, we're going to keep diving through these studies one by one, always connecting them back to the lived reality of men today, and always through the C4PC lens. So if you're enjoying this kind of content, this is a great moment to for you to hit the like button and subscribe. That is really a great support to this channel, to a brand new humble channel. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube to recommend these live streams to other men who might need to hear this today. So thank you so much for being here and checking the chat. Whether I have a question, so I don't have a question, but I highly appreciate my soul, hopefully not lonely male watcher called Hollow 406 that joined at the beginning. Hopefully stayed all the live stream, and all of you can watch the replay once this live streams becomes a regular video of the channel. So thank you so much for being here and joining this live stream. So see you in the next one.